we're gonna kick into things, the coolest things about Netlify, which is this great topic that we're excited to talk about, especially because we have an expert here in all the cool things about Netlify, Chris Fool McCraw himself. So I think this is probably a good time to ask you, Chris, can you introduce yourself a little bit and like just kind of talk about your life story?
Well, I'll try to keep it to just the interesting parts. 46 years ago, I was born in Evanston, Illinois. No, I did. Let's keep it relevant. So, technically speaking, I've been into Unix since I was a teenager, which was 30 years ago. And my career was a little bit winding. I went through college for a computer science degree and discovered that I hated programming. And then decided that instead I liked networks. So I was a network administrator for most of the time I was in college. And for about a decade afterwards, moved to Portland and decided that I really rather would help people. And, network administrators typically say no. They spend all day saying, hey, there's a firewall preventing that. No, I can't allow it. I worked for the largest university in Texas for 10 years. And it was a series of no, your students cannot do that. No, the FBI is going to complain about that. And tech support has been the polar opposite. I get to say yes and to people 50 times a day. Hey, can Netlify scratch my back? No, but you could write a serverless function that operates your back scratcher. And this work has been so much more satisfying. And just in the last 7 years, I joined Netlify to help people, but I found that the best way I could help people was to build a team to help people. So I've really enjoyed empowering my about 18 teammates now to do their best work and to help all of you. And now we're here together, and there are some wacky things about Netlify that you'll find out during this webinar, but also I think we're doing some great work. And the reason that I work here, besides the amazing colleagues, is that I feel like per Tim O'Reilly's formula, Netlify delivers more value than it extracts. So it feels good for me to work here. We give away so much on our free plans. We sponsor so many open source teams, and we sponsored a whole lot of COVID-19 teams during the pandemic. So that part feels good to me, in addition to getting to help all of y'all.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Chris. Okay, so I think like so like what's changed in the last 7 years that you've seen? It's so much different.
It's the world of the Jamstack. I mean, that's what we were really focused on 7 years ago. And, that term, some people like it, some people hate it. I was a big fan of the LAMP stack before then as a system administrator. I liked Linux and, Apache, MySQL, PHP. I unfortunately still run a PHP website in my volunteer gig, and boy, do I hate it. It's just the last thing that has me programming on servers. But, and you know how good I am at programming based on my last answer. So, but Netlify started out, when I started out Netlify, it felt like S3 to me. It seemed like a really basic service, right? You got some static files, we'll put them on the internet for you. We cache them efficiently. I was just kind of like a little skeptical as a business idea, right? I interviewed and joined the team, and I was like, well, if this is boring, I can quit in a week. But what it turned out was that the service, while it sounded simple on paper, serve a bunch of static files, because at the time there were no Lambda functions or edge functions. It was all very static. It just seemed basic. And I was like, I don't think it's going to be interesting to provide tech support on it. But I tell you what, in that first week, I learned a whole lot about Braintree and billing. I learned a whole lot about SSL that I hadn't known before. And it just grew from there. Every day at work, I learn. And, lately I'm learning about the future of the dynamic and composable web. How does a Lambda function fit into the picture for your site? And how does that help us, or actually impede us from reasoning about the state of your deploys? When I started, it was a set of files. That set was live, or the next set was live. The debugging was pretty straightforward. Unless you had done something super wacky with your cache control headers, we served the files we had, and then we were done. But over the years, adding support for Lambda, built-in framework detection, integrations and build plugins, all that stuff has really enriched both the build experience and the serve experience. People able to internationalize and personalize their websites without counting on third-party services. Like, I need an authorization and identification service. No, we got that built in. I have some dynamic code on my shopping cart needs to talk to my database. Cool. Serverless functions are the way to go. I don't even have a database, but I need to store data in the cloud. Hey, let's talk about integrations with companies like FaunaDB. All that stuff has been unlocked in the 7 years since I started, and it makes our job so much more challenging, but it makes such a richer ecosystem for all the devs out there and for the kind of sites we're seeing.
Yeah.
It honestly, we weren't all hobbyists 7 years ago, but most of our sites were a lot smaller on average. And now we're seeing huge sites with hundreds of thousands of pages. And, we couldn't have uploaded a site that big 7 years ago. Our API just wasn't fast enough. We told people all the time, hey, you need to deploy like 4 sites, bro. 200,000 files, too many for us. Not the case anymore. So there's been a lot of good changes around just making the system more usable and more scalable, in addition to all that specific feature excitement, enrichment.
I mean, 7 years ago, everyone was so jazzed about like running their developer blog on, on Gatsby or on Jekyll or like whatever the case may be, right? Now it's like, okay, well, how do we run our, this huge e-commerce site on Netlify, right? And like it's such a different type of thing, and so many more different features and functionality. So like, I think one thing that like is kind of like, I think a lot of people are very curious about is like, what kinds of questions do you get? Like what topics come up that they write into support? I mean, a lot of, like you guys probably get everything under the sun, right? But like what topics come up?
Yeah, at a high level, and I think y'all will be interested in both kind of like the overall stats as well as some specific examples. So at a high level, most of our questions are about 3 things: DNS, building your site, and performance/caching. So I guess serving your site. We do get a lot of other, kind of administrative requests, but the interesting ones, those are the 3 broad categories. And DNS, if you know it, then you're like, yeah, people struggle with that. And if you don't know it, you're like, that sounds complicated. So it's a problem either way.
I hate that thing where you're like, is my thing live or not? Like it's in the DNS world somewhere. I can't tell. I'm just gonna go eat something or
Yep, that is unfortunately the answer to a lot of DNS questions is go for a walk, come back, it might be fixed. But it's also like there's a lot of best practices, and there's no reason for most people to be DNS experts. I use my mom as an example. She's a really savvy woman. She runs an investment club and she's a master gardener. She might have a website about her gardening club or about her investment club, but she never, ever needs to understand DNS. Like, she's like, you can't teach this old cat new tricks. And I'm like, I don't even want to. I want to take care of that magically. But since she's also not really writing a whole lot of code, I'm not quite sure that she's ready for Netlify yet. But what we hope for is that we abstract that kind of stuff away from your like concerns, right? Hey, I went and put in my domain name, I purchased it, it got all set up. I never had to think about DNS. Netlify just took care of that for me. And it's when that doesn't just magically work that we get the questions. And we love helping with those because they're all pretty interesting and generally have a distinct resolution that we can be sure is right. A lot of other things like, hey, I can't build my site. There's no one way to build your site, right? We give you a Unix shell to let you do whatever you want. We try to set it up right for you, but that one's a lot harder to guess at. We can tell it's a Next.js site in most cases because it's laid out like a Next.js site, but what we can't tell necessarily is that it's a Jekyll site or that it isn't a Next.js site and we should do the thing to build an 11D site or something like that. And a lot of those questions are just like, hey, the automatic setup didn't work. And so we often get to improve things like our templates based on that feedback. Like, hey, it worked great until I used a name with an apostrophe in it. And then everything blew up. Like, oh, well, that's a bug report, not just a you're holding it wrong report. So
yeah,
that's a pretty big category. And it's one that's a little harder for us to support just because we can't see your source code. That's something that many customers don't realize, but our staff does not have direct access to your source code. Your permissions at GitHub are your permissions. What happens when you link a site in our UI is that your authentication in your browser is used to tell GitHub or GitLab or Azure DevOps or Bitbucket that like, hey, yeah, you should install this, setup to link the site to Netlify. And then after that, the Git provider just tells us to build the site, and the only permissions that we have set up are to pull your code, but that's just our build system, not our staff. Like I can't go browse your repo. And so when a question comes in about how do I build my site and it's not working, we kind of are looking at a black box. We can see the same build logs you can. We know a few things you might not know, like, hey, yeah, if you don't have a .next folder as your output, we're not going to detect it as a Next website. So we can guide people to kind of fit in the cookie cutter, but a lot of it is more partnering around debugging builds. And so if you're check out our forums, Sam, maybe you could post a link to that debugging site builds article, because that's kind of we have a single starting place for all debugging, all build debugging that we encourage people to start from. And it's more of a like, these are things that commonly go wrong, then this is what's wrong with your build.
Yeah.
But it's always a good starting place because we got to partner on debugging those.
And that's it. So I learned something like, hey, Netlify support staff does not have access to your source code. That's great thing to know and broadcast. The second thing is answers.netlify.com is the forum. So a lot of some folks may know about the forum, some folks may not know about the forum, honestly. So I think, I'm not sure if I shared it earlier, but I'm the Gatsby co-founder. We were honestly super jealous of the Netlify forum. We were like, dang, we wish we had a forum like Netlify's forum, because you've got a lot of like community members that are just really active there answering questions. And some really large number of topics to search, and maybe someone's already asked a question before and you can just find it there. So if that's a great place to go for questions as well, or resources. And then the third thing is that we've got support folks in the chat. So if you have like questions, you can all drop them in the chat and people are going to answer. And yes, so and as Chris pointed out, I started Netlify a couple months ago when the Gatsby team joined and Gatsby Cloud joined Netlify. So if you are new to Netlify, I am also new to Netlify. So we're in it together. If you're experienced on Netlify, Chris is there with you because he is very experienced with Netlify. So question, I think, like for the audience now is maybe a good time to ask this. Like, what has your Netlify experience been like? Like, has it anything that stand out? Stuff that you've loved, stuff that you've hated, stuff that you found really interesting, stuff that was confusing to you, stuff that was confusing to you initially, and then you were like, oh, I get why it's like this way. Like, just drop that in the chat. I think I'm very curious to hear things. Okay. Megan Walsh says, straightforward. I have run into issues with FOUC and I was like, what? Why? Sergey Cherniev says, where is the server? That's a great question, Sergey. Megan Walsh says, flash of unstyled content. Yes. Suzanne says, I love Netlify functions. Yeah, I'm just reading this. Chris, you should probably respond to them, but I'm just gonna.
Yeah, I'm actually finding something here. So where is the server is an interesting question because we don't have a server, but here's a post in the forums that I'm sharing in the chat. That is a fairly up-to-date list of our points of presence for our CDNs.
So there's more philosophical question too. Like, it's like, well, it's not, there's not really a server, there's files,
Yeah, that is something that I think is interesting in this audience, and I'll just go into it for 30 seconds. I won't go on another TED Talk length diatribe here, but when you look at that list of server locations, in each of those locations, we have multiple servers. And each of those servers is fully independent, maintains its own cache, its own connection to our backend. And so sometimes when we have outages, what will happen is our API or backend will go down, but the CDN nodes keep running. They have their own independent cache. They keep serving all that cached content. So when you're debugging something, when you're like, hey, I saw stale content once upon a time and I can't seem to reproduce it, probably one server out of our hundreds has a bad cache. And in that case, you should absolutely write into support and be like, this URL produced a incorrect response. And then we can scan through all our servers and look for it.
Yeah.
It's a little hard for you to do because they get routed to geographically based on where your IP is, but we have ways.
Yeah. Well, like, Chris, what is what is a CDN?
Well, let's zoom out a little bit on that. So Our CDN is a multi-cloud operation. We run servers with a full stack of kind of web server type software on it, and those CDN nodes are what your visitors talk to exclusively. That's what your site name.netlify.app writes to. It's what our load balancers route to. It's what your enterprise special custom config routes to. All those servers are pretty much the same. There's just more of them on our enterprise network and less cache contention. But we try to push all of the content that is cacheable out to the edge, so it's closest to your visitors. So the less latency, quicker responses. Functions change that a lot because generally you don't want to cache the output of a function, right? If I go to the shopping cart and buy a thing, you don't want Sam to get my receipt or see my cart later when he goes to the same function. So have to be a little careful about how you cache there. But our CDN caches the route to the function instead of the output of the function in that case to save a lookup against our API, trying to figure out who is supposed to serve that traffic. So our CDN is aiming to bring the content that can be cached closer to your visitors and also bring the experience closer to the edge, doing things like running edge functions and doing JWT auth. All that stuff is kicked off directly from the CDN server, not going to our typical API and backend.
Yeah, I feel like there's like a whole sort of like webinar we can do on how the Netlify CDN operates, because it's always like the topic of CDNs is just like endlessly fascinating to me. You're saying there's not a server, there's just this huge server that's hyper efficient at serving stuff and has this like incredibly smart cache. So like there's a whole thing. And I'm gonna restrain my curiosity from like asking you like 3 follow-up questions and like get back to the kind of the chat here. So Kieran McGuire says, we're loving it. We're coming from an old school monolithic DXP, a dinosaur, to decoupled Next.js. The most useful thing I discovered recently was branch-specific environmental variables, meaning we can point a preview deploy to a different instance in our cloud CMS to test things like content model changes. Chris, you have any interesting comments or things to say about that?
Sorry, I was reading the chat a little bit. It's there. People do a lot of kind of different things with our CDN and with our systems in general. And one of the most interesting things I think is people figuring out new things to do. Branch specific environment variables unlock a whole lot of stuff for sure. Just people often show us what they can build with our system instead of our ideas being what they end up building. We created webhooks as a way to trigger builds. We didn't create them. They existed before we got here, but we implemented them. And we thought, okay, this is how Git providers are going to tell us to build. And real quick, it became clear that like that was the least interesting use case. The most interesting use case is like, hey, let my CMS trigger a build. Let my customers trigger a build. Let my QA team trigger a build. Like all of those things. Let my automated systems trigger a build. When we see the stock market tank, we got to rebuild that homepage to get the new numbers up there. All of those things are so much more interesting than, hey, I made another commit and I expect Netlify to build it. Yeah, that's the steady state. But what can you do that's even more interesting or more? And we're not really like out here like begging you to break the system with your weird use case, but we love that we've built a system that's flexible enough for you to do some interesting things with.
Okay. And Ro asks, what can we do with Netlify functions?
Yeah. I am not a JavaScript developer, so that question's not the best question for me. But what I do see people doing is just all the things that you wouldn't want to do in your static front end, right? When you don't want to host a back end, if you have a whole shopping cart system, maybe that's a whole system, like, right? You host it on Shopify, you proxy to Shopify, they do all this stuff. But what if you're using Stripe and you have a really simple model? Hey, I just want people to pay for my newsletter one time. I don't need an e-commerce site. I just need to accept a payment. That's a great thing to do with the function. You can't do it necessarily direct from the front end because there's a lot of secret tokens and stuff you might need that you don't want your visitors to be able to scrape and go cheat your system and pay 1 cent for your $100 item. But functions are a great way to kind of like put that logic and the dynamic part just off to the side of your kind of, marketing site that has static blog posts in it. Or suppose that you have multiple languages on your site. You don't even need to use functions to do this, but it is one way you could internationalize your content. We have a lot of built-in features that I think are better for that. If you've got 2 copies of all your articles, one in English, one in Italian, You don't need functions to handle that. You can just use our redirects based on language and country detection, and that'll be way faster than having a call out to AWS going every single time. So that is one thing to keep in mind when you're using functions, is that we generally think of them as synchronous. So your visitor's waiting for that thing to finish running. Are they going to wait for 5 seconds? Maybe. Are they wait for 30 seconds? Probably not. So you should be careful about what you're doing in that function. And fortunately, we do provide background functions for things that, you know, they don't have to wait around for. You know, placing that order, maybe you want to get the confirmation in the synchronous function and then actually like provision the order in your warehouse in a background function that can happen in 5 minutes rather than while that person sits there and watches the spinner.
Yeah. Okay, Sergey, this is a really great question about data options in Netlify. I think we'll get to it in a couple of minutes. So I want to go back to asking Chris some questions. And so, Chris, what is your favorite like Netlify feature that not a lot of people know about?
Yeah. Well, you know, Sam and I talked about this before, and I gave him this answer, which I do want to share with this audience, which is the audit logs. At the account level, for pro and higher accounts, we keep your audit logs for weeks, months, years, and they're really good for two things. One, in case, you know, you're like, hey, this site started behaving differently yesterday. You go look in the audit log, you find that your colleague like changed the setting for asset optimization. Yeah, that'll do it. Oh, they added a new host name. Okay, well, that's good. That shouldn't break anything, but I'd like to know who did it and when. And the audit logs show all that. And then the other kind of like less happy situation, hey, you have a breach. Someone gets access to your email. You know that they've probably accessed some of your services. You can see the audit logs in Netlify, or at least we can, even if you're on a free plan, we keep that data for a little while. So don't hesitate to write to us to be like, hey, what happened in my account last week? I don't trust it right now. And we can see exactly what changes were made. The most interesting one in those situations we probably had was that somebody injected some snippets. We have a snippet injection feature where you can just put some HTML or JavaScript that goes on every single page, and they'd broken into somebody's account and put their own like support chat widget in a snippet. And so these people were all talking to the attacker via these people's homepage, and they came in and they're like, where did this widget come from? Like, I don't know. We didn't do this. we untangled it in the audit logs and found out that, hey, Bob did it. And they're like, Bob's on the call. And Bob's like, I did not do it. We're like, well, Bob, bad news. Someone got access to your account. I guess you can start changing passwords. Wow. Not a great story, but at least we figured out what was going on there, because that was a real head scratcher. And yeah,
I mean, security always makes for great like detective stories, right? Like it scratches that like itch that we have for like the whodunit.
Yep.
But you know, good to know that Netlify does have a sort of a script injection feature. I also am learning this for the first time. And the second thing is like good to know that we have audit logs. So if someone takes over your account, that you can figure out, you know, that they did it. So okay, so you said that was the answer that was the answer that we talked about last time we talked about. Do you have a new answer?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of little cool features that I like about Netlify, and one that I wanted to call out that some people here definitely know about, because I've seen some frequent flyer names in the chat. You know, I see Nathan Morris and Sean Macon, so we've worked together extensively. But we set a lot of environment variables for you during build. And those can really turn your build into or make your build a lot easier. And I'm trying to find the link right now. We have a bunch of kind of like things you might think, oh, that's normal, like my site ID. You can access that during build. But did you know, I'm almost finding the doc that I'm trying to share. Here we go. I'll put it in the chat. Oh gosh, I'm trying to use a new browser, Arc, and I do not know it well enough to copy the link. There we go. All right. We set a lot of variables or you can set a lot of variables that affect how we build. But that list that I linked is kind of the where you should start. The coolest ones are down lower under read-only variables in that doc. If you use a webhook to trigger a build, did you know that you can access the body of that webhook? It's a HTTP post. And if you were to send a message like, don't build this build, your build could read that and act on it.
Whoa.
And we actually got a pretty cool blog post, which I'm not gonna be able to find while we're on this call, but by a recently departed employee named Jessica Parsons. No, sorry, it's on Melanie Richards' blog about. She actually does this. She has a feature. She's one of our product managers, and she has a social network feature on her site that when somebody mentions her blog, she links to that blog that mentioned her blog, right? And so there's some system that notifies, hits a Netlify webhook with the link to the blog.
Whoa.
So that her build can just pluck it right out of there, put it into the HTML and publish a new one. And that all happens without her touching it at all. While she sleeps, she gets additional mentions just collated in her blog. And I love little tricks like that where you're like, hey, I'm doing this, and I bet there's an easy way to do this. Because she came looking for help in like writing an API call to pull this data from her social provider. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, but how are they telling you about it? She's like, oh, I'll just run it once a day or on demand. And it just didn't seem like the best solution. And so, kind of stitching together some of these little known pieces. She tried a few different things. She was like, I could write a function to do this, but she's not, as super JavaScript developer. And so we tried to find a low code way to do it. And it was 2 lines of shell script and during the build.
Hey, wow. That is super cool. I'm like, that sounds like we all get, anyone that like blogs and like posts it on Twitter, gets like the Twitter conversation is interesting, and sometimes you want to include that. Like that's such a cool way of like, kind of like stitching together different services in a way that makes the web a better place, which we all like love. Okay. Yeah. So this kind of gets into the build process, which I feel like is something we said that we would talk about. So definitely want to talk about it. And I know something also that you just are like I was really cool when we were talking, before we were planning this webinar, you were sort of like walking through all the different like things that people did that you've seen people do with their builds. So like, do you want to like just start sharing some of that stuff with the audience? I was just, my mind was blown when you were telling me about this stuff.
Yeah. We give you intentionally a unit shell to do whatever you want during the build. I mean, it's yes, your build has to be able to run in Unix, but a lot of our customers use Windows and set up things via WSL. Our CLI also works fine on Windows, Mac, Unix. But when you trigger a build in our CI, we really try to give you like, we look at it as like, hey, here's some like sticks and an axe, build what you want. We try to build a little bit for you, but try not to be too prescriptive. So what we do make sure is there for you is like JavaScript and Unix and a version of Ruby, a version of Python, some other stuff. But of course, you can add your own versions. You can change which version we use. People who are like, I need to build my site using Maven. We're like, well, then you can bring Maven to the build environment. And, it's just a Unix shell. You can bring any binary you want. You can build a binary. As a proof of concept, back when I started, I was like, but what if I wanted to use PHP in a build? And I built PHP as part of my build, and then I used it on my files. It was really inefficient. It took almost 15 minutes just to build PHP. And guess what? That's how long we let your build go for. So,
but you built PHP.
Yeah, it was possible to do. And the right answer to do that, if I was going to stick with that, now we just include PHP in the build image, would be to build my own copy of PHP and commit it to my GitHub repo, where we can clone it in 1 second and then just run it. And that's something our support team can help you with, but TLDR, you're building x86 64 binaries for Ubuntu. And if you statically link them, they should just work. But we have GCC and the other kind of build tools in the environment. So if you need to build a new copy of GCC, you can, albeit you will probably run out of time before that finishes, unless you have asked us to extend your build time limit. Default build time limit, by the way, 15 minutes. And we are happy to extend it for anybody on a pro or higher plan. Just write into the forums and we can bump it up for you. But our best practice, make your builds fast. You don't want to be hanging out, having your developers sword fight on shares like in that XKCD comic. The site's building, man. I can't do anything right now. So we are always happy to like try to give you some advice on speeding up your builds, because we would rather your build go immediately. We don't want to make money on build minutes or on bandwidth. That's not what we're here to sell. We're here to sell like the collaborative development experience, the composable web, and that stuff we charge for because it costs us money. But we would rather that your site is slick and small and fits within the bandwidth allocation. And we'd rather your builds take 10 seconds so your devs are unblocked. Like, that's the dream. The dream isn't, cool, we enabled you to have a 3-hour long build. The dream is like, let's start making that smaller.
Yeah, no, I love that
Yeah.
way of saying it. And there's a lot of, I mean, we certainly spent a lot of time at Gatsby, like on sort of like optimizing build times. It is something that, like, if you think about it, you can make progress, but sometimes it's useful to have the help of experts who have done it before. So please write in with questions about, hey, my builds are long, I would like to make them faster, because we do have that expertise to help. So okay, so let's pull some more questions from the audience. So Sergey has the question of the year, or perhaps the decade, which is, so first off, he asks, what are the data options at Netlify? And then he clarifies with that, this is the question of the year or the decade, which is, how do we bridge static and dynamic? I don't know, Chris, how do we bridge static and dynamic? You tell us.
Yeah. Well, I think it benefits us to kind of dive into the definition a little bit there. What do you think dynamic means? What I think it means is just like, hey, you have some data that doesn't change, like your logo. Maybe even your logo is not a good example because you want it to be responsive to devices. So you got some logo that doesn't change. That blog post, the text ain't changing. We could cache that. Yay team, let's not like build it again and again and again, unless there's data in there that's changing. If your blog post includes a real-time stock ticker, and for some reason you've interpolated that dynamic data, then you're gonna have to rebuild it every time the stock ticker changes if you want to be up to date. What I would propose there is that, like, your blog post is still static and you have like a widget or a div or something that you populate with the output of a Lambda that you might want to run at browse time. You don't need to rebuild the whole page. You just need to rebuild like the data in that widget or refresh it or something. And that's where I would use a function to be like, hey, there's a static part of my site, and that part we want to like make its own standalone files that can be cached at Netlify CDN Edge. Guess what? That blog post, presumably that text is never going to change. Maybe you fix a typo once, but you rebuild your site and we're like, don't need to rebuild that. Don't need to re-upload it to CDN nodes. It's the same as it was before. This blog post will be the same for the rest of its life until, unless we rebrand or something. But the dynamic part is the part that you want to abstract. You're like, okay, hey, the session tracker, the login bit, this logged in person reading a web page. That web page you want in the cache, but the details about, hey, Chris, this page was built for you with love, where it says my name in the upper right corner and log out. Clearly, that part needs to be a dynamic, right? Yeah. So I'm always looking for opportunities to kind of pull out the amount that needs to be dynamic. And one like generally applicable example of this: you run a Next.js site. You really should consider making your homepage not be SSR. SSR means server-side rendered, means that we run a Lambda function every time someone comes to visit it. Lambda functions will never be as fast as static files. Now, if your content really does need to be 100% dynamic, hey, I show a different page to everybody from each different city. Okay, well, then maybe you need it to be rendered by a function. But for 99.9% of the use cases, it's the landing page for your company. Yeah, you change it often. Make a new deploy to change it. Let the content be static. Especially for that landing page, because that is people's first impression, and you want it to be snappy, not like, okay, because we know people don't wait around for that pause if it's too long. So that's one place where I really focus on, let's try to make the landing page, or as much of it as possible, static, just to make that time to first bite on that first impression. It's really important.
Yeah, and I mean, Netlify supports all of your sort of favorite framework tricks. There was a year, I think it was 2020, where like we all decided, like Netlify decided, Gatsby decided, Next decided, we all decided to like have this like in between phase between like fully static and fully dynamic, and we went with DSG and PQR and ISR and all these like 3-letter acronyms, and like we got to a place where like the frameworks did support that, and like that's all supported on Netlify. So like look at your framework of choice and look at what the options are there, and then like look at the Netlify docs for how to run that on Netlify, because you can get often the best of both worlds of in between. Okay, so let's see, we've got some more questions. Matt Miller asks, does Netlify have a good solution for long-running functions like jobs that might take several minutes? Chris.
Yeah, I think Amelia already answered this one. We have a background functions thing, and she had it up. Oh, sorry, Audrey answered it. I did not mean to. I have two great other coworkers in the chat who I'd like to call out to, in addition to Sam and Sam. Audrey and Amelia are both support engineers in Netlify, so please take their advice as canonical in the chat. Thank you, Audrey, for answering that one.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I guess we're at the bottom here. So more people, this is more questions in the chat. If folks want to drop more questions in the chat, but I guess we're at the end of the chat. Yeah,
I'm curious. So I do see a question from Jordan Rosenberg about 20 minutes ago that I was having trouble parsing. He said, would Netlify ever consider introducing dynamic feature flag CMS capabilities? Could you dive into that a little more about like what you mean by that, Jordan? Because I mean, we do use a feature flagging service inside our code, but we kind of think that the patterns we expose should let you set feature flags to maybe not at like the launch darkly level, but at the like, hey, you know, this person's logged in as an editor in the CMS. They see a different experience than somebody who's logged in without permissions or somebody's logged in with an owner. Yeah, we thanks, Jordan, for that answer. We definitely do see some opportunities for partnership with feature flag providers over the coming years. That's going to be a big focus of kind of Netlify's work this year, is in integrating with more partners. So I don't have any specific details about Launch Darkly or other such providers, but I have there's a smell in the air that I have that's an area that we'll want to dive into, just because we love integrating with dev tools. And you know,
and the thing that would be helpful for us too is if you can just write your use case in the chat, because this webinar is recorded, the chat is recorded. Just write your use case and why you'd want to use it as deeply as possible in the chat as you're willing to share, and we will send it along to our product team so they know how to like think about getting integrations in a way that will support you.
Yeah, and that's something we always let me open the door to that. We love feature requests here.
Yes.
Our support team does not have the power to like build them or tell you like, hey, yeah, that's coming in 3 weeks, 2 days, and 1 minute. We're not writing the code, we're not deploying the code, we're not choosing what gets worked on. But if we don't hear your use cases, we're much less likely to build them. And so especially if you got some partner that you're like, oh my gosh, I use nothing but Adobe Experience Manager, I really need you to build something to go with that, let us know. Especially if you're an enterprise customer, let your account manager know. They actually, if you are an enterprise customer, the account managers have a special line to our product managers, and sometimes can get commitments on timelines for things. Our support team talks about what's here today. How can I use the existing tooling to do this thing? Yeah, tomorrow we might fix that bug. Today you got to work around it. So we're always going to focus on kind of like what you can do now, not, yes, you know, it's possible that in a future world we'll have on-premise firewalls for your use. Like, it's also possible we won't. So let's talk about what we can do today.
Yeah, I think that's honestly been one of my biggest lessons over the last few years, right? Is that like because nobody has all the answers. We're all actually coming up with the answers for best practices on a wide variety of things, whether that's, you know, feature flagging, whether that's like setting up a build, you know, to do the things that you want to do, whether that's where to store your data, whether that's like what should be static versus dynamic, whether that's how to integrate your CMS with your, you know, framework and like the right design templates and all the stuff. We're all coming up with the answers like on the fly. Nobody is an expert, but what does tend to happen over time is that a lot of that knowledge kind of, you know, lives in the heads of specific people. They like often live in the, you know, account managers' heads and the support and in the support team's heads, and, you know, in agencies' heads if you're working with an agency that like knows the space really well, right? And so like what we try to do is that like is just sort of like provide like content and like webinars and whatever that like get that knowledge out of our heads when we know where it is and share it with you, but also like, you know, for you, like, you know, like please write in with these questions, because it may be the case that like we heard about somebody like 3 weeks ago that like had your exact same problem and found this like really clever workaround, and like, you know, if you write in, we may be able to share that with you, and like, you know, then you may have like the solution to the problem that you were trying to like figure out for the whole last sprint, and you're like really frustrated, and like then magically you got a solution. Sometimes knowledge lives online, and sometimes it lives in people's heads. And like, you know, if you think it might live in somebody's head, please write in and ask us.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you would, the thing that can help us kind of support you the best is showing up with your use case, not with your proposed solution. You know, here's the situation. You come in, you're like, yeah, I'm having trouble getting my edge function to work. Like, okay, well, we'll help you debug the edge function. And then we get the edge function to compile and run. You're like, oh, but it doesn't do what I need it to do. Or like, oh, well, what do you need it to do? And they're like, well, I need it to log people in. Like, oh, well, an edge function would be a weird way to do that, since they're all like, you know, independent. There's no state saved between them. I would advise you do something different, like use a JWT. And so if you show up with the question rather than the like, I'm trying to work on this solution to the problem, we often are like, oh, there's an easier way to do that. You don't have to write a function. As it turns out, we have a service built in called identity that will do auth for you. And you're like, oh boy, have I been wasting that last week barking up this tree trying to implement my own JWT, blah, blah, blah. No, you don't have to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's like, I feel like the thing that I learned when I became a senior engineer was that like, every time like an engineer came to me with a question of how do I do something, and like the first question I would ask them is like, they'd be like, oh, this function isn't working, or like this code is buggy or something. Like, what are you trying to do? And it's like it was such a powerful lesson, that question of like, what are you trying to do? You know, we ask that question, but also, you know, if you can share that answer, then that might save us some time in getting to the point where we need to ask that question.
Yeah.
So audience question, who here has visited the Netlify Forums? Plug for the Netlify Forums. Sam, what is the coolest thing about the Netlify Forums?
I think the coolest thing about the Netlify Forums is probably that I work in there. So usually if there's something that I can do, I respond very quickly. But also that everyone's really friendly, and a lot of people are really willing to help, you know, kind of explain things, especially if you're like a novice developer. And it's just a really safe space for individuals trying to get into web development that aren't super technical.
Yeah. What about if you are a developer and you have a question about how to do something or another?
I just recommend, you know, creating a thread, and there's also a lot of professional developers that come in and just are been, you know, designing sites for a really long time and can help you pretty much answer anything. And if not, if you're like a pro tier hire, support engineers come in and help as well, or you can page into our help desk. So yeah.
And I got the chance when I was at Gatsby to chat with some like folks who are kind of community moderators in the Netlify forum, and I was always just really impressed by like their dedication and how much they like enjoyed helping people, which is like great, because people who help people are great, and it's great to be able to talk to people who like helping people. Okay, so another question, I think, let me just check back in the chat before we go on to more questions. Kieran says he asked a question, or he or she, I'm not sure. I asked a question in the forum about the Netlify Lighthouse plugin, and the maintainer showed up to help me debug something. Wow, that's amazing. Alex Pearson says, I love the Netlify forums because my question is usually already answered. Yeah, that's pretty much the best way of like getting an answer to the question, is not even having to ask it. And then, yeah, just to read what Chris says, we love working in public because it helps the next person. Yeah. And then let's see, I'm scrolling down a little bit. Nathan asks, how do we decide between posting on the answers forum or contacting support? That is a great question, and I do not have an answer, but I know the people who do, and they are on this call right now. Chris and Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, so you can't, oh, well, Chris just answered it, but yeah, if you're on a paid subscription, you can message into our help desk, but oftentimes you'll get a faster response if you put it in the forums, because other people can help. And then sometimes if you have specific stuff that you don't feel comfortable sharing, like your repo and it's private, you can usually message me and we leave like internal notes for other support engineers to help you. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the end, it's up to you if you have a pro or hire account where you go. But I'd like to think of it as it's, you'll get like more general advice. Like if you have a question about Node rather than about Netlify, the forums is definitely like a better place to ask, because you ask in the help desk and be like, yes, there are docs at nodejs.org. But if you're like, hey, how do I use a specific version of Node with Netlify? Hey, that's a question for us. And in either of those, like the forums would be a great place, because first of all, the answer is probably already there. If you search there, that's the beauty of, that's the real number one win of the forums from my point of view. Like, yes, we're friendly, we're helpful, but there's so much information there already. Someone has probably asked your question and there's probably an answer. Do take it with a grain of salt, because we were answering somebody else's question 2 years ago, but it's not a bad starting place to be like, hey, I tried this thing that I found in your forums and it didn't work. Like, oh, well, let's talk about it. Maybe we'll even go update that post. That's the other cool thing about Discourse. It lets us edit what we've written. And so we have a ton of support guides that are kind of like best practices. And the situation changes sometimes. We remove some because we built the feature that we were telling you how to work around, the fact that it was missing. So we do try to update stuff. And if you ever see something in there that seems out of date, please say something, because it is trivial for us to update. And then the next time you go looking for it, you find the correct details without asking. As Sam was mentioning earlier, the best questions when you don't have to ask. Not because I don't like answering questions, but because you'd rather not wait for me to parse it and give you an answer. And, while I can do that in 5 seconds in this webinar, I sleep at night. And, we can't help everybody the second they write in. So,
Yeah.
Discourse is what I said. That's what our forums are built on. Son of Stack Overflow.
Yeah, it's an open source forum software, super cool. And Danny asks if there's a Discord or Slack channel for Netlify help. There are some, and Sam pointed out, there are some like specific Slacks and Discords around technology. So Gatsby has a Discord. I believe like there are maybe like an 11T, or you all probably know better than I do, but I believe some of the specific like technologies have Discords or Slacks as well. But that's also a good thing to check if it's like if it's a question specific to a specific technology. You may be able to find a Slack or a Discord that the maintainers of that technology are there, and that might be a great place to go as well. So okay, I'm looking at the time. We've got to, like, this has been super fun. I think folks may have something starting at the beginning of the hour, so we do want to be respectful of your time, and we'll kind of go through the last couple of questions, which is, Chris, I mean, do you have like a favorite bug report of all the bug reports you have filed?
Well, I have a lot of favorite bug reports. I love filing bugs. I've filed well over 1,000 in Netlify. Unfortunately, the only award I've gotten is groans when I enter the room. He's back. Something must be broken. But I think the one that is funnest to tell a story about is the one known as BitBalloon number 212. BitBalloon happens to be the name of our backend code base. It's also the name of Matt, our founder's previous business, bitballoon.com, that we're using the same code base. Anyway, bug 212, pretty early in my tenure here. We are up to about number 16,000 on that code base by now, as a sign of where we're at. Anyway, bug 212 was, please pass query string parameters through automatically on redirects and proxy routes. That is something that you'd think was just table stakes. Hey, I put in, my question mark UTM campaign equals X, and it didn't come out the other side. Go to my server that I'm proxying to. What the heck, y'all? We're like, oh, you just have to configure each of those query parameters individually. And then we hear the use case of, I have 10 of them and some are optional. And that means you need 10 factorial redirect rules to cover all those possibilities. So nobody wants that. So I filed that feature request. I thought it was a bug report at first. Turned out like, no, that's how we built it. It's how it's supposed to work. And by the time I'd attached about 300 or 400 customers to it, I finally stopped keeping track, because I was like, clearly the demand is here, folks. Sure. That turned into a pretty cool thing that actually did not get fixed in our backend. Back when I started, as I mentioned, like things were a lot simpler. We had a few code bases. Now we have hundreds. And now it's in one of our networking stack code bases where the networking team fixed it. The back-end engineers, in fact, said that is definitely a network problem. Let's pass it over to those folks. And those folks built us a solution a couple of years ago, and we announced it in the forums, and there was much rejoicing. That closing that bug was such a treat. And I was telling Sam that, I remember BitBalloon bug number 212. And until last week, I could not remember my partner's birthday. But then I told her about Sam and I's practice for this webinar. And she's like, dude, you need to learn my birthday and stop telling the world that you don't love me as much as you love this bug. And I was like, oh, babe, that's not how it is. But I now know her birthday, so I can't say that anymore.
Can you tell us what her birthday is?
Yes, it is February 19th.
Excellent. It is now recorded for posterity that you do know.
And she'll be sure to appreciate that I told that whole story too, I'm sure.
Yes, I'm sure that's great. See, everybody, conversations are great because we all know we all learn things we didn't know, and sometimes we remember things we didn't know. Okay, this is I'm gonna stop getting off on tangents here. You told me this really heartwarming story about support engineers, and I think this is probably a great thing to kind of close on.
Yeah.
Chris.
So this is generally true. Tech support tends to be a kind of high turnover area, but that's the generic answer. And we've always tried to be pretty special. I have a long career. I was, extreme. I built a, network for a $20 million building in one of my jobs. I was like, cool, like I got a budget of $5 million. I bought some real big Cisco hardware, and going to tech support, you feel a little bit unempowered in a lot of situations. Like you can't do the things you want to do to help the people that are struggling. And so I took a real focus at Netlify, since I got to call some of the shots of like, let's be better. Let's get empowered to help people. We can't need to ask permission for every like $5 refund. Like it just doesn't scale with millions of customers. And once you empower your staff and you pay them well, they don't turn over as much. So we've had really good retention here. And one of my favorite stories, although it's got a little twist at the end that I told Sam last time, was that the first support engineer we hired, a woman named Jessica Parsons, was already a teacher, already a back front-end dev. She came and she saw that our docs needed big help. They were written by two people for whom English was not their native language, and they were just exactly what an engineer would put out about their feature. This, you need to configure XYZ to use this. And she saw an opportunity to make the docs welcoming and inclusive and guide you to where you need to get to. And so she switched jobs. She became the head of our documentation engineering team. And that was so great for our support team because she had already been in the trenches with us, saw what customers are struggling with and how they struggled to understand how our system worked. And she did as much as she could in the doc side. We did not have that many developers at the time. We couldn't just put it all on the front end. It should just hold your hand while you set up DNS. We didn't have that bandwidth, but we did have the bandwidth to make the docs better so that people could find the right answer. And this was before we had the forums. So the docs were really the number one thing that you could find online. Jessica then went on to become a product manager and a project manager in Netlify. She's one of my favorite colleagues. Was with us for almost 6 years when she left last Friday. But the story there is not, you're not trapped in support here. You're empowered to help people. You're an engineer. And, we got a lot of people who are on the team who are really smart, really capable, and want you to succeed in what you do. And that spirit makes us kind of like our work. Not kind of, really like our work. There's hard times, but we're really glad to be able to support each other and support y'all. It's really special, and it makes us feel good, and we love collaborating. So thanks for being here, and thanks for being part of the wider community. We aren't here to be like, you must Netlify to be part of the wider community. We just like, front-end dev and building cool stuff on the web, and we hope we're the right platform for you, but we at least hope that we're moving the state of the art forward for everybody.
Yeah, that's a great way. Thanks, Chris. It's thanks everybody for coming. I think if we got more questions, hopefully we can move those over to the forum or right into support and get those get those answered. But thank you everybody for coming and spending this, this time together. Really glad to have you on Netlify. Really glad to have you be part of the Netlify community. And so thanks, and look forward to whenever we get to see each other next.
See y'all in the forums. Until then.
Until
Thank
then.
you.
Until then.